Lane Johnson, the offensive tackle of the Philadelphia Eagles, did talk with NFL insiders about the acquisition of Saquon Barkley. He was a little bit surprised. I think a lot of people were that he ended up in the division, stayed in the NFC East, ended up with Philly. Here was their OT.
And once you see him, you'll never forget just, physically imposing guy. I think he walks around 230. He likes to golf, so we've been golfing a few times. He's ultra competitive. But, yeah, when you see, obviously, what he can do at the running back position, and we can flex him out at receiver, and he can go. It's really unbelievable. I never thought that he would be playing for us, but, here it is. I know that he's excited. We're definitely excited up front. And, I think he's poised for a big year.
So when you couple that with the fact that they go out and they sign Saquon Barkley, outside of Jason Kelce, they brought everybody back this year. And then there's this story that came out that even after they went and signed Michael Vick to the contract extension years ago, that they were aggressively trying to trade up because they wanted to get their hands on Andrew Luck. Dude, if you're an Eagles fan, or if you're just a fan in general, that's all you can ask for from your organization. They are never satisfied. They never settle. If it means changing coaches, whatever it takes. And it's why they're near the top of the league over the past decade plus with different coaches, different quarterbacks. It's just another example of Philadelphia getting aggressive and doing things that a lot of organizations and a lot of teams wouldn't.
Hoe Roseman is one of the best at constructing a roster to make them competitive and allow them to compete for Super Bowls. Case closed. He is one of the best in the NFL at doing so. He's ultimately the one behind the scenes pulling the strings. Now, that being said, he's typically had his issues with coaches. It doesn't matter who it's been in recent history. Even Doug Peterson, who's won them a Super Bowl, it didn't matter. He's moved on. He's now in Jacksonville. Last year, with how things went with that season, you got some rumblings that maybe there's some discontent at times between Nick Sirianni and the front office, or players, coach staff, and all that. It seems like Hoe Roseman is the one person that has been the constant on a team that has been able to put together some of the most talented rosters the NFL has seen. I know that, remember the whole Dream Team, and that was back a little bit, I think maybe after the whole Michael Vick era there as their quarterback.
2011.
But so it was right around that time.
Yeah.
You think back to that and you go, yeah, that was over a decade ago. And they were putting together rosters that's what players were calling it. That's what people on the outside viewed it as. Just ridiculously talented teams. Now, that doesn't always mean you equate to wins. It takes a combination of things, and chemistry and good scheme and coaching. But they're at least set up to have a shot. Every offseason, Eagles fans should be extremely excited about what their roster looks like going into the season. Even if they face some injury issues, they still have depth there too, enough to be able to compete. So he's done an unbelievable job. And in comparison to other franchises, you can see why they're always in the hunt, always in contention. It's why I'm optimistic about the team this year. And if you look at the changes they made this offseason, it wasn't even focused on really much of the roster construction of the roster. It was more about the coaching staff. Hiring 2 new coordinators was essentially saying, look, we feel like we've got the guys on the roster. It was just the guys maybe calling the defense, calling the offense that weren't the right fit for us. And we feel much better with Kellen Moore. We feel much better with Vic Fangio. So they're, to me, a Super Bowl contending team from the NFC. I think Jalen Hurts is going to have a bounce-back year. Hopefully he's 100% healthy, because remember at times last year it seemed like he was really fighting through a ton. But the way they do business, the way they construct their roster is as good as anyone in the NFL.
It is kind of interesting how just because of last year and the way it ended, that it's sort of under the radar as a potential Super Bowl team. Because, if you just looked at, the Lions have shorter odds to go to the Super Bowl than the Eagles do. And I look at them and I go, all right, well, who else really improved that dramatically in the NFC? If you just went division-wise, who else really improved dramatically in the NFC East? The Cowboys sure as hell didn't. Washington, you can argue that, but they've got a rookie quarterback. And who the hell knows with the Giants? The Giants lost maybe their best player to Philadelphia in Saquon Barkley. So I look at it and I go, whatever the issue was in the meltdown and the coaches and all of that stuff, there was talks that A.J. Brown wasn't happy. Well, they extended him, as we pointed out. Like, I look at it and I go, I don't know that it's even close as to who's had the best offseason in that division. And yet, when you talk about, the Super Bowl contenders coming out of the NFC, like I think a lot of people look at the Niners and go, well, that's a real possibility. The Lions take the next step. And yet you got Philadelphia sitting there at 17-1 to win a Super Bowl. You got Philadelphia sitting there in the NFC right now, if you were to go on DraftKings, at 7-1. That's a live dog. They shouldn't have the same odds as Dallas to come out of the NFC based on this offseason. Philly's got a chance here. And they don't have the Super Bowl hangover like they did last year.
Why don't you just tell people to bet on them then? Instead of saying, oh, they got a chance, or oh, they're live dog, or the same odds as Dallas. Just tell people to bet on them.
Because I don't.
That's what you're trying to do.
No,
the problem is you're worried about giving that advice because you're awful at gambling.
Okay, well, we don't need to call names here, and we don't need to pass judgment on the air. That's not what this is about. That's not what this is about.
Names.
We're simply
we judged your gambling record.
Okay, all I'm pointing out here is that
Lee, do I need to be backed up on this? I mean, he's been awful gambling.
It feels like they have flown under the radar. All right, that's what it feels like to me.
Who's worse between Jonas and Live Bet Jesus? I'm not quite sure, but
it's probably Live Bet Jesus because he bets less and loses just as much.
Hey, Lee, did you send out a picture of that quote-unquote pub you were at? Did you crop out those people and send that picture out or no?
No, not yet. Working on it.
You got to send that out just so we don't feel like we're alienating the listeners when we talk about where you went and hung out yesterday.
Okay, my fault. Here we go.
It's all right. By the way,
I'm not sure what you're up to with that.
If you, why would you want to have tacos at a pub?
They're not great tacos, but $2 tacos on Taco Tuesday.
Okay.
Yeah, for the price, because you're paying $5 shots. So you have to make up for it somewhere, Jonas.
Like what? Why not just make tacos at home? Probably save money.
I made a breakfast taco actually right before I went there.
Okay.
Yeah, it was delicious, much better.
All right.
So you made a breakfast taco? That was better. Yet then you went to this pub, for $2 tacos.
He loves specials, man.
Yeah,
he loves
I'm a sucker.
Specials.
Are you really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Are you the guy that hears the happy hour special and you're like, yep, I'll have every one of those?
I was actually really upset because I got there right after happy hour, and then I got really excited because I was like, oh, it's Taco Tuesday. That goes the whole day.
The Super Bowl in Phoenix, where we were sitting at the bar and we're with Scott Shapiro, our boss, is there. And Lee orders the brown bag surprise. And Scott and I are looking at him like, what's that? And Lee goes, I don't know. Let's see. And it's like $1 cheaper. And they give you a brown bag and you open up. Surprise! You have no idea which beer it is, but because it was $1 cheaper, Lee was getting brown bag surprises, and it was like some awful, like what was it? Like it was some
whatever they're trying to get rid of.
Yeah. So Lee, just because he could save 4 quarters, he went brown bag surprise, and our boss was looking at him going, all right. It's just so yeah, he's a big fan of specials. That's
in Lee's defense, okay, I'll say this. He was trying to save the company money because he's definitely going to expense that. There's no doubt.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, yeah, I did see that story. I mean, it's too bad LeVar's not here to comment on that. The situation in Las Vegas currently going on. But nonetheless, that is your look at the NFC East right now with the Philadelphia Eagles aggressive yet again in trying to make a move. And what's funny about the Eagles too? They could go to the postseason, and if they lose in, say, the first round, or they get upset or, lose on a crazy way, Nick Sirianni could be out of a job and they would just hire Bill Belichick. And Belichick with that roster would absolutely take that job in Philly. Or is Howie Roseman too abrasive that Belichick wouldn't want to work with Howie Roseman? Because that roster is ready-made if something were to happen. Ready to go.
Obviously, they probably didn't inquire about Bill Belichick, but I'm sure it'd be one that he would look at. I mean, it'd be on the East Coast. Sounds like he wants to be on the East Coast. But it is kind of interesting if you go back to last year. I mean, I guess similar to Dallas in some ways, they've been a team that's been a perennial playoff team. They've won a Super Bowl much more recently than the Dallas Cowboys. But like even last year, right? 11-6 record's not good enough. They get into the playoffs, they lose the wild card round to the Tampa Bay Bucks, and that's where all the speculation. I mean, it really started, earlier in the year when they were 10-1 at one point, and everyone's like, man, this is like odd, but no one felt really good about them as a 10-1 football team. It just felt off, or something felt different. And then they went on that skid, but they only won one of their last 6 games.
And Devontae Smith was the one guy that was calling it out. Like, yeah, our record's great, but we're not playing that well.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, well, what do you mean? Like, you have
Like,
this.
just wait.
Yeah. And
it wasn't like they had a difficult stretch either. I mean, outside of playing San Fran after that and Dallas, I mean, Seattle, the Giants twice, and then the Cardinals. I mean, the only team they beat was the Giants once out of that.
Yeah, so we get to see how that shapes up with the Philadelphia Eagles. By the way, are they going to be rocking the old 80s, late 80s/90s unis permanently?
Are you
next
asking
year?
me? I'm not into that. Lee's more into the kind of fashion
Yeah,
stuff.
I mean, if anybody knows, like, if you're the Eagles and you really want to tie this whole thing together, just go back to those late 80s, like Randall Cunningham year jerseys. Like, they're so cool, so much better than whatever this modern edition is. That would be my recommendation.